Start on the home screen for the order and click the Create Diagram button. This takes you to the diagram section of the order. If there are any existing diagrams, you will see them under Current Diagrams in the drop-down box. Right now, it's empty. If diagrams were listed, you could select one of them and click Load to edit it. To create a new diagram, enter a title, usually just the building address or number. Set the grid size. The default is 5 feet. This works for most buildings up to about 140 or 150 feet in length. Above 150 feet in the largest dimension, you may need to increase the grid size. Finally, select the number of floors. If all floors are the same size, enter the total number of floors. If the floors are different sizes, enter one for the number of floors, and you can calculate the square footage separately. Click Add to create the diagram. On the diagram screen, you will find tools to make drawing diagrams easier. These are located on the Tools palette, which is the gray box on your screen. The Tools palette has several options. The first is Drag or Fix. If Drag is selected, the tool palette can be moved around the screen. If Fix is selected, the tool palette will stay in place. In terms of tools, the perpendicular tool allows you to draw straight lines. Click on the grid to start a line. Move to where you want the line to end and click again. The line length will appear in feet as you drag, and on the line when it's completed. The red box with arrows indicates that the lines are connected, showing the number of feet, and connecting the lines is the default mode. Under the Actions section, use Undo Last to delete the most recent component that was added to the drawing. You can also click Clear Canvas to erase the entire drawing and start over. The slanting tool functions like the perpendicular tool, except that it allows you to draw angled lines. It also displays the length in feet, and the lines will be connected by default. The Snap to Grid tool draws slanting and perpendicular lines, but the lines will always start and end on the vertices of the grid. Like with the other line tools, the square footage is displayed and the lines are connected by default. Notice that the cursor snaps to the vertices each time. This tends to be less useful for drawing buildings, where the exact square footage is important, but it can be useful for drawing labels, roads, arrows, or other unusual items you might need to add to a diagram. The Text tool allows text to be added to the diagram. Just click, type any text that you wish to add, and hit Enter. You can click the text again to edit it. To remove it, delete the text and hit Enter again. If you create a text box by accident, just make sure it's blank and hit Enter, and it will disappear. The Undo tool can be very useful for quickly correcting mistakes. Unlike the Undo Last button, the Undo tool allows you to erase specific parts of the diagram, even if they weren't the most recent parts created. This means that you can click on a part of the diagram that was drawn first and remove only that piece of the drawing. You can remove it without having to use Undo Last to remove all of the more recent sections of the drawing first. Keep in mind that removing some parts of the drawing may cause other parts attached to them to disappear as well. The Key tool can be very useful for drawing buildings that have all, or mostly all, perpendicular lines. Select a starting point and type the number of feet in the Key toolbox. Then use the arrows on your keyboard to select the line direction. So in this case, we're hitting the right arrow, the down arrow, and the left arrow. When there is only one segment left, the best practice is to hit the Connect Ends button. which is located at the bottom of the Tools palette under the Actions heading. Clicking Connect Ends will complete the diagram by connecting the final two lines of the shape. It will also calculate the square footage for the shape that has been drawn. The Style and Options sections also have some useful features, particularly for more complex drawings. The Show Lengths button is checked on by default and causes the length of each line and feet to be displayed next to the line. The Connect Lines button ensures that the lines connect by default. Both of these options can be disabled, allowing disconnected lines without square footage numbers to be drawn. Turning both these features back on connects the lines again and displays the square footage for each line. Another useful tool in the Style section is the Stroke menu. This controls the stroke of the line and defaults to solid lines. This can be changed in the bottom drop-down menu to dotted, allowing dotted lines to be drawn as needed and interspersed with solid lines. A final useful tool is the Arrow menu, which allows arrows to be added to the end of lines. This can be useful in more complex diagrams. Typically, you would use the arrow feature with show lengths and connected lines turned off. If you select End from the bottom drop-down menu, an arrow will be added to the end of the line. Select both from the menu, and arrows will be added to both ends of the line. Start will add an arrow to the beginning of the line. For demonstration purposes, we'll be drawing this building. It's 4 floors and has a basically regular shape with one slanting section at the front. Here's another view showing the larger context and shape of the building. Notice that the building shape is irregular, but it's almost all straight lines, aside from the front. We'll want to draw that slanted front section last. To create the drawing for this building, we'll start by entering the building address in the address box. The grid size can stay at 5 feet because there is no dimension longer than 150 feet. The number of floors is 4. Click Add to create the diagram and arrive at the diagram screen. Drag the Tools palette out of the way. This building has already been measured and the dimensions determined using Google Earth. These are the measurements that you would have either from the inspection or from Google Earth or from some other source. Measuring the building itself is not covered in this video. To diagram this building, we will use the Key tool because it's mostly perpendicular lines. Pick a starting point and type in the number of feet for the first line in the Key toolbox. Use the down arrow key to indicate the direction of the line. Then type in the next measurement and continue to outline the building using the arrow keys. So down arrow, left arrow, up arrow. This leaves only the slanting section at the front of the building. Connecting this type of line manually can be difficult. We've left this section for last so that we can use the Connect Ends button to easily connect it and complete the drawing. This shows that the footprint of the shape we've drawn is 2,220 square feet times 4 floors for a total square footage of 8,880 square feet. Hit Set, and the square footage will display at the top of the diagram. Hit Save at the top of the screen, and the diagram will be saved to the report. More complex buildings, or buildings with multiple floor sizes, can be especially challenging. Take, for example, this building, which has a first floor of one footprint, another 4 floors of another footprint, and another 4 floors of a third footprint. Often the best way to measure a building like this is using satellite imagery. Here's another view, showing the building and the rough layout of floors from above. Assuming you have obtained measurements for the various floor footprints, the diagram tool can easily be used to both draw the building and to help calculate the square footage. To diagram this building, navigate to the diagram screen and enter a title for the building. Typically, this would be the address of the building. The building does not have any dimensions greater than 150 feet, but we'll be diagramming each floor footprint separately. So we'll set the grid size to 8 feet to accommodate multiple drawings. The number of floors will be set to 1, because there are multiple floor footprints. Setting the number of floors to 1 is helpful in cases where the floors are different sizes, because it will let us easily set the correct square footage for the entire building at the end of the process. Click Add to create the diagram. Drag the tool's palette out of the way and select the key tool, again keeping in mind that the measurements for this building have been calculated elsewhere. This video assumes those measurements are on hand. We'll start with the first floor. The first floor is 57 feet by 100 feet. We'll use the arrow keys to quickly add the measurements. Click Connect Ends to calculate the square footage of the shape. We see that the first floor has a square footage of 5,700 square feet. We'll go through each floor footprint, calculating the square footage this way, using the diagram tool to do the math for us. It's important when calculating just one floor or one footprint of a floor in a larger building that you record the square footage of that floor elsewhere and hit Do Not Set, because this square footage is not the square footage of the whole building. In this case, we'll select the Text tool and record the square footage on the drawing itself. With the tool selected, we just click on the drawing to type the appropriate text. The second through fifth floors have a slightly different footprint. We'll use the key tool again to quickly complete the drawing for these floors. As before, we select a starting point, enter the length in feet of each line, and select the line direction with the arrow keys. Hit the Connect Ends button again to complete the shape and calculate the square footage. Looks like 5,400 square feet for floors 2 through 5. Hit Do Not Set and annotate the diagram using the Text tool. 5,400 square feet per floor times 4 floors, which equals 21,600 square feet total for the floors with this shape. Finally, the 5th through 9th floors have a third footprint. We'll diagram that footprint below the first 2 drawings. Use the key tool and the arrow keys to quickly complete the shape. Click Connect Ends to calculate the square footage for the final section. Again, hit Do Not Set and annotate the diagram. Now that we know the square footage of the different floor plans, we can add them together to obtain the final square footage for the building. Click Set Square Footage at the top of the window. Add up the totals from the various footprint drawings and enter the final amount in the top box. In this case, the total is 43,368 square feet. Notice that no comma is entered here. Hit Set, and the square footage will display at the top of the window. If comma is entered, the square footage will display as a nan value. If you see this, it just means you've entered an inappropriate character. There should only be numbers in the square footage field. Finally, it's important to note that complex buildings can be drawn in a variety of ways. Another approach would have been to use the diagram tool to calculate the various footprints, as done here, and then to draw the building from the top in a single diagram, showing each floor with arrows and labels for the different footprints. Most drawings are acceptable, as long as the total square footage provided is correct. Remember to click Save to add the diagram to the report. Multi-building risks can pose special challenges. Take this apartment complex, for example. There are 12 large buildings, along with several smaller outbuildings. Even risks with many buildings will usually include several buildings that are identical. Notice that there are only 3 different building designs or footprints here: a large apartment building, a smaller apartment building, and a clubhouse. It's not necessary to measure every building to obtain the square footage for the complex. Simply measure one building of each design and multiply by the total number of buildings with that design. In terms of diagrams, this is fairly straightforward. Simply create a diagram for each building footprint you've measured. The best practice is to create all the blank diagrams first, and then go in and complete the drawings. Set the grid size and the number of floors based on the specific building, and then click Add. Creating all the diagrams first can help avoid confusion and overlooked buildings. It's also easier to draw one building per diagram than to fit multiple buildings into a single sketch. Continue creating blank diagrams and clicking Add until there is a blank diagram present for each building that needs to be drawn. Once all the diagrams have been added to the report, they can be accessed individually via the drop-down menu in the Current Diagrams section. Click on the diagram you want to work on, and then click Load to access the drawing screen. You can then complete the drawing for that particular building and calculate the square footage. Once the square footage for each building has been calculated, multiply by the number of buildings of that footprint and add all of the totals together to obtain the total square footage for the complex. Many risks can have large areas of balcony, as seen in this example of a motel. There can also be large overhangs, stairways, and other features. In all cases, the balconies do not need to be diagrammed, nor do overhanging areas of roof that may cover a balcony, stairwell, or car pull through. Only finished building space should be included in the diagram and final reported square footage. Roof overhangs, including large eaves, do not need to be included in the square footage. Here's another example. Balconies and covered open spaces give this building a very complex shape. If those areas are subtracted, most buildings become much simpler to diagram. Unlike balconies, finished basements do need to be included in the building's square footage. Here is a drawing of the same building from the simple diagram section of the video. The drawing is almost done, and we're ready to calculate the square footage using Connect Ends. We know from the inspection of this building that there is a full finished basement level, which needs to be counted in the square footage. As usual, hit Connect Ends to generate the square footage for the building. Then click the Set button to display the square footage at the top of the diagram. Remember that this is a 4-story building with a full finished basement. The square footage of the finished basement is not displayed in this total that now appears at the top of the diagram. That basement area needs to be added. There are many ways to do this, but one of the easiest is by using the Text tool. Simply click next to the square footage and add a notation indicating the area of the finished basement. Be sure that when you report the square footage on the report itself, you include the finished basement in the total. So, in this case, the total square footage that would be reported for this building is the displayed total for the above-grade floors, plus the finished basement square footage, 8,880 square feet, plus 2,220 square feet, for a total square footage of 11,100 square feet for the building. Remember to hit Save to add the diagram to the report. In some cases, an inspector may prefer to use an outside diagram tool that is not available on the Easy Survey Form system. This might be Rapid Sketch, or any number of other diagram tools that are commonly used in inspection work. Outside files from sources like county records or architecture firms can also work, as long as the square footage is accurate. If there is a diagram tool you feel more comfortable using, please feel free to use it and to attach the diagram to the report as a separate file. Once you've drawn the building using an outside program, you can easily upload it to the report as follows. From the order screen, navigate down to Images and Attachments and click the Upload button. This is the same button used to upload photos to reports. Navigate to the Type section and click the Diagram button. Then click Browse to select a file from your computer. You can name the file by typing in a caption, or you can click the checkbox to use the existing file name. Make sure that the file is one of the approved types listed in the Instructions column. Finally, click Upload to add the diagram to the report. The diagram file will appear here, under Current Diagram Attachments.